When my daughter looked me in the eye and said, "That money should be mine, not yours," I felt my world shatter into a million pieces. Days later, I was standing in a courtroom while she tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. That's when I realized life isn't just a game of Monopoly. Sometimes the people trying to send you directly to jail are the ones you gave the free parking to all their lives. If you're watching this, please subscribe and tell me where you're from in the comments. Because trust me, this story has more twists than a mountain road, and you won't want to miss a single turn. My name is Robert Caldwell. 2 months ago, I buried my father, Henry Caldwell, a self-made man who built an empire from nothing but grit and determination. The kind of man who wore the same watch for 40 years because it still works just fine. The grief was still raw, like an open wound that stings with every memory. Dad had been my North Star. My mother passed when I was young, so it was just him and me against the world for most of my childhood. He taught me everything: how to throw a baseball, how to change a tire, how to be a man of your word. And when I became a father myself to my daughter Marissa, I tried to channel everything he'd taught me. Marisa was my everything. From the moment the nurse placed her in my arms, I swore I'd give her the world. After her mother left us when she was just 7, it became my mission to make sure she never felt that absence too deeply. Perhaps I overcompensated: private schools, dance lessons, summer programs in Europe. I wanted her to have every opportunity one didn't. The day of the will reading was unseasonably cold for October. The mahogany-paneled office of Winston & Hayes law firm felt suffocating as Mr. Hayes, Dad's attorney for over 30 years, adjusted his glasses and began to read. To my son, Robert James Caldwell, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, investments, business holdings, and liquid assets, valued at approximately $27 million. The silence in the room was deafening. I looked over at Marissa, expecting to see the same shock I felt. But what I saw chilled me more than the news itself. Her face was a mask of rage, her knuckles white as she gripped the armrests of her chair. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice eerily controlled. "Grandpa promised me." "There's no mistake, Miss Caldwell," Mr. Hayes interrupted gently. "Your grandfather was very clear about his wishes. Script part separator equals. Mr. Hayes cleared his throat and continued reading. "However," he said, "there is a stipulation. Robert must maintain primary control of Caldwell Industries for at least 1 year before any assets can be distributed or sold." Marissa stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I've been working at the company for 5 years while Dad was off playing golf and attending charity galas." "Marissa," I said, stunned by her outburst. "I haven't been playing anything. I've been running my own consulting firm." "Which wouldn't exist without Grandpa's connections," she snapped. Mr. Hayes looked uncomfortable but continued. "There's more. If anyone contests this will, their portion, or potential future considerations, will be forfeited to the Caldwell Foundation." Marissa grabbed her purse. "We'll see about that." She stormed out, slamming the heavy door behind her. I sat there, dumbfounded. "I don't understand, Frank," I said to Mr. Hayes once we were alone. "Why would Dad do this?" Marissa always had a special bond with him. Frank removed his glasses. Henry was concerned about Marissa's motivations. He noticed changes in her the last few years. The constant requests for advancements, the new friends from questionable backgrounds. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying tread carefully, Robert. This fortune has brought out the worst in people before." He handed me an envelope. "Henry asked me to give you this privately. Don't open it unless you absolutely need to." That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from Marissa, alternating between guilt trips and thinly veiled threats. Around midnight, a final message came through. "You have 48 hours to sign over what should be mine, or you'll regret it." The daughter I raised would never speak to me this way. I wondered if I ever really knew her at all. Script part separator equals. The next morning, I found 3 missed calls from Frank Hayes. When I called back, his voice was tense. "Robert, Marissa's already contacted Brenner and Associates. They're the sharks who specialize in contesting wills." I gripped the phone tighter. "Can she actually win?" "Unlikely, but they'll make your life hell trying." They're suggesting you've manipulated Henry in his final days, or that he wasn't mentally competent. I nearly dropped the phone. That's absurd. Dad was sharp as a tack until the end. I know that, but they'll drag this out, create doubts. The press will love it. Caldwell Empire crumbles in family feud. After hanging up, I drove to my father's house. My house now, I supposed. It was a stately colonial that had always felt warm and inviting. Now it loomed before me like a mausoleum of broken trust. Inside, I headed straight for Dad's study. If there were answers, they'd be here. Photos lined the walls. Dad and me fishing when I was 10. Dad holding baby Marissa, Marissa's college graduation. In every photo with Marissa, there was such pride in his eyes. What changed? I opened his desk drawer and found his leather journal. I'd never read it before. It felt like an invasion. But I needed answers. The most recent entries made my blood run cold. Marissa asked about my will again today. 3rd time this month. When I mentioned my plans for the charitable foundation, she became agitated. Said charity begins at home. Another entry. Found Marissa in my study when I returned unexpectedly. She claimed to be looking for reading glasses, but nothing seemed amiss. Still, a feeling I can't shake. Then, the last entry, dated just a week before his death. Robert has always been steady, reliable. Not flashy, but solid. Marissa burns brighter but consumes everything in her path. I fear what this money might make her become. The decision is made. The doorbell rang, startling me. Through the window, I saw Marissa's Mercedes in the driveway. I slipped the journal into my jacket. Whatever confrontation was coming, I wasn't ready, but I had no choice. Script part separator, When I opened the door, Marissa stood there like a storm cloud in designer clothes. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back hastily, and her eyes were rimmed with red, either from crying or lack of sleep. "Dad," she said, her voice softer than I expected. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside to let her. "Marissa brought that new boyfriend to dinner. Marcus keeps talking about unlocking the company's value and liberating capital. When I mentioned my plans to keep the business intact for future generations, I saw something dark cross Marissa's face. Later overheard them in the garden. Just a few more months and we can do whatever we want with the old man's money. I never thought my granddaughter would see me as nothing more than a wallet. My hands suas e connected the USB drive to my laptop. It contained recorded conversations, completely legal in our state as Dad had been a participant. I heard Marissa's voice. "Grandpa, you know Dad has never understood the business. He's too soft. The company needs a decisive leader." Then, more damning, "Marcus says we could triple our personal worth if we break up the company. The board will follow me if you name me as successor." I picked up the sealed envelope with trembling hands. Whatever was inside, I knew it would change everything. Script part separator, I broke the seal and pulled out several documents. The first was a letter from my father. "Robert, if you're reading this, the worst has happened. Marissa has chosen greed over family. I've watched her change these past years, influenced by people who see our family legacy as nothing but dollar signs. Each breaks my heart. What follows is evidence I've gathered. The PI reports show Marissa and her boyfriend Marcus planning to liquidate the company entirely once they gain control. They've already approached buyers for our manufacturing divisions. Most disturbing is what they plan for you. They've consulted lawyers about having you declared incompetent to manage your affairs. Marcus has connections with a doctor willing to provide psychological evaluations without examining you. I've established safeguards. The second document is an amendment to my will that automatically triggers if it's contested. It places everything in an irrevocable trust that you control, with a provision that if you're declared mentally incompetent, control transfers to the board of trustees I've selected, not to Marissa. I didn't want to believe my granddaughter capable of this. I blame myself for indulging her too much. Perhaps we both did. Protect our legacy, son. And someday, if possible, help Marissa find her way back to the person she once was. With love and faith in you, Dad. The second document was the trust amendment, legally executed and notarized. The third was a sealed envelope addressed to Judge Carlton Morrison, my father's old friend who now presided over probate court. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meeting tomorrow at Riverside Cafe. Come alone. Information about Marissa's plans. 10 horas da manhã. I didn't know if it was a trap, but I was running out of options and time. Script part separator equals. The Riverside Cafe sat on the water's edge, its patio offering a view that would normally calm my nerves. Not today. I arrived 20 minutes early, choosing a corner table with my back to the wall. My father's voice issued in my head, never let them see you sweat, son. At exactly 10 a.m., a woman in her mid-30s approached. Mr. Caldwell, I'm Patricia Vintes. I recognized the name immediately. Your dad's former executive assistant. She nodded, sitting down. I've been working for Marissa the past year. Her voice dropped. What I'm doing could cost me my job, but your father was good to me. I owe him this. Patricia slid a folder across the table. Marissa and Marcus have been planning this for 18 months. They've already negotiated conditional sales agreements for 3 company divisions. I flipped through the documents, my stomach churning. This would dismantle everything Dad built. There's more, Patricia said. They've been gathering evidence against you. Edited photos showing you intoxicated, statements from people claiming you've had breakdowns. That's all fabricated. I know. But they have a doctor, Dr. Reynolds, ready to testify about your deteriorating mental state without ever examining you. The hearing is scheduled for next week. Next week. My voice cracked. That's impossible. I would have been notified. Patricia looked uncomfortable. They've been intercepting your mail at the company office. You're still listed as receiving correspondence there. I closed the folder, feeling sick. Why are you helping me? Last week, I overheard Marissa and Marcus laughing about how they'd ship you off to some facility in Arizona once they got control. Your father saved my mother's medical care when no one else would. I couldn't let this happen. As Patricia left, she turned back. Be careful, Mr. Caldwell. Marcus has connections you wouldn't believe. Dangerous ones. I sat alone, watching boats drift on the river, feeling more resolved than ever. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about survival. Script part separator equals. Back at my hotel, I'd moved out of my home after finding a suspicious car parked outside for 3 nights straight. I spread the documents across the bed. Marissa had been thorough in her betrayal. There were fake testimonials from concerned family friends about my drinking. I rarely touched alcohol. Photos of me looking distraught at Dad's funeral, doctored to appear disheveled, even medical records with falsified information. My phone hung, Frankie Hayes. Robert, we have a serious problem. Judge Harmon has been assigned to your case. Is that bad? The worst. He's golfing buddies with Dr. Reynolds, the same Dr. Marissa lined up. And he rules in favor of conservatorship about 90% of the time. I pressed my fingers against my temples. We need to get this moved to another judge. I'm trying, but we only have 3 days before the emergency hearing. They're moving incredibly fast. After hanging up, I opened Dad's letter again, focusing on the mention of Judge Carlton Morrison. Could he help? I dialed his chambers, not expecting much. Robert, his gravelly voice answered. I've been expecting your call. Your father left something in my care. 2 hours later, I sat in Morrison's study, watching him unlock an old safe. Henry knew this day might come, he said, removing a thick envelope. About a year ago, he came to me troubled about Marissa. He'd overheard something concerning. He handed me a small recording device. This is legally obtained, one-party consent. It's Marissa and this Marcus fellow discussing their plans in detail, including fabricating evidence against you. Henry was in the next room. I pressed play and heard my daughter's voice, clinical and cold. Once we have control, we sell everything, move the money offshore, and Dad gets declared incompetent permanently. The doctor's already arranged. Script part separator equals. I felt physically ill hearing my daughter's voice plotting my downfall. Marcus's voice answered her. The best part is, once he's declared incompetent, we can access everything. No one questions when children take over for mentally unfit parents. They laughed together, and I had to shut it off. "This is admissible?" I asked Judge Morrison. "Completely legal. One-party consent in this state. Your father was in the room." He leaned forward. "Robert, there's something else. Henry suspected Marcus isn't just a gold digger. He may be connected to people who've been trying to acquire Caldwell Industries for years, specifically to strip its patents and technology." "What people?" "Competitors with questionable ethics. Your father was developing defense technology the last few years." This revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. Dad's company had a small but significant defense contracting division. If certain technologies fell into the wrong hands. Judge Morrison handed me another envelope. "The case will be transferred to my court tomorrow morning. I've already signed the order. But you need to be prepared. They'll come at you hard when they realize their plan is failing." "I'm ready," I said, though my voice wavered. As I left, my phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. "Last chance, Dad. Sign the papers, or tomorrow your reputation is destroyed forever." I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to my father's house. My house, and for the first time since his death, I slept in his bed, drawing strength from the man who had prepared me for this battle without my knowing it. The next morning, Frank called at dawn. "They know. Judge Harmon is furious about the transfer. Marissa's lawyer is demanding an emergency hearing today instead of waiting." "Good," I said. "I'm tired of waiting." 3 hours later, I walked into Judge Morrison's courtroom, my evidence organized meticulously. Marissa and Marcus sat at the opposite table, her eyes burning with rage when she saw me. She leaned over to whisper something to her attorney, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Script part separator, equals. Judge Morrison entered the courtroom, his expression grave. "This emergency hearing will come to order. Ms. Caldwell, I understand you're seeking conservatorship over your father's financial and personal affairs." Marissa's attorney stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We have substantial evidence that Mr. Caldwell is mentally unfit to manage the considerable estate left to him." "Proceed," Judge Morrison said. "What followed was character assassination. Former employees claimed I'd appeared at work intoxicated. Distant relatives testified about erratic behavior they'd witnessed, events that had never happened. Dr. Reynolds took the stand, describing my paranoid tendencies and delusional thinking despite never having met me. Throughout it all, I remained calm, making notes and occasionally whispering to Frank. Marissa seemed to grow more confident with each witness, occasionally shooting triumphant glances my way. Finally, her attorney said, "The evidence clearly shows Mr. Caldwell's mental decline. We ask the court to grant temporary emergency conservatorship to Ms. Caldwell effective immediately." Judge Morrison turned to me. "Mr. Caldwell, your response?" I stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to call one witness before presenting my evidence." "Proceed." I call Marissa Caldwell to the stand. Her smug expression faltered as she was sworn in. "Marissa," I began gently, "when was the last time you and I had dinner together before your grandfather died?" "About 2 weeks before," she answered cautiously. And her face paled slightly. "You must be confused. That just proves my point about your memory issues." I turned to Judge Morrison. "Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A, my medical records for the past 5 years, certified by my actual physician. They show no cognitive decline, no substance abuse issues, and note my dietary change 3 years ago." I handed the documents to the clerk, then continued with Marissa. "Marissa, do you recognize this voice?" I played the recording from Morrison's device. Her eyes widened as her own voice filled the courtroom. "Once we have control, we sell everything, move the money offshore, and Dad gets declared incompetent permanently." That's not me," she stammered. "That's obviously doctored." I presented phone records showing calls between Marissa and Dr. Reynolds dating back 6 months, bank transfers from her account to witnesses who had testified against me, and the PI reports my father had commissioned. As I methodically dismantled her case, Marissa's composure cracked. Her attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but she pushed him away. "You're ruining everything," she suddenly shouted at me. "Grandpa promised me that company would be mine someday." The courtroom fell silent as Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Ms. Caldwell, are you stating that your motivation is to control Caldwell Industries rather than concern for your father's welfare?" She realized her mistake too late. I meant. Your Honor, I interrupted. I'd like to submit Henry Caldwell's final amendment to his will. As the judge reviewed it, Marcus abruptly stood and headed for the exit. Bailiff, Judge Morrison called, detain that man. Script part separator, Two security officers intercepted Marcus at the door. He struggled briefly before the judge's voice cut through the commotion. Mr. Fletcher, I suggest you remain for these proceedings. The FBI agents waiting outside will want to speak with you regardless. Marcus went pale, looking frantically at Marissa, who seemed equally shocked. I continued my presentation. Your Honor, my final exhibit is a federal intelligence report concerning Marcus Fletcher's connections to foreign entities interested in acquiring Caldwell Industries defense technology patents. Judge Morrison examined the document carefully. This is most concerning. Marissa stood up, her voice shaking. This is ridiculous. You're making all this up because you can't accept that Grandpa loved me more. Miss Caldwell, the judge said sternly, the evidence suggests you and Mr. Fletcher conspired to have your father declared incompetent so you could liquidate Caldwell Industries against your grandfather's explicit wishes. He was going to change the will, she insisted desperately. He told me so. Then Dad got to him. I pulled out my father's journal. Your grandfather documented everything, Marissa. Your demands, your threats, even overheard conversations with Marcus. He wasn't changing his will in your favor. He was protecting the company from you. The judge cleared his throat. Based on the evidence presented, I'm dismissing the petition for conservatorship. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for potential charges of attempted fraud, conspiracy, and perjury. As the bailiff approached Marcus, he suddenly bolted toward an emergency exit. The alarm blared as he disappeared into a stairwell with security in pursuit. Marissa collapsed into her chair, her face a mask of defeat and fury. Our eyes met across the courtroom, and for just a moment, I saw something I hadn't expected. Fear. Script part separator, As the courtroom emptied, I sat alone at the table, physically and emotionally drained. Frank squeezed my shoulder as he gathered our documents. You did it, Robert. Henry would be proud. But victory felt hollow. I'd won the case but lost my daughter in the process. Outside, reporters swarmed like vultures. Mr. Caldwell, how does it feel to have your own daughter try to declare you incompetent? Any comment on Marcus Fletcher's connections to foreign interests? Will you press charges against Marissa? I pushed through them without comment, sliding into Frank's waiting car. They arrested Marcus trying to board a private plane, Frank said as we pulled away. The FBI had been tracking him for months. Apparently, your father's suspicions were dead on. And Marissa? Released pending investigation. She's claiming she was manipulated by Marcus, had no knowledge of his foreign connections. I stared out the window at the city I'd known all my life, suddenly feeling like a stranger in it. Do you believe her? Frank sighed. Does it matter what I believe? That night, alone in Dad's study, my study now, I poured a rare glass of scotch and opened his journal again. The last entry caught my eye. Family fortunes often become family curses. Money reveals who people truly are. It doesn't change them. Robert understands this. I pray Marissa learns it before it's too late. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Dad. Marissa's voice sounded small, broken. They're saying terrible things about me on the news. They're saying what happened in court, Marissa. Marcus manipulated me. I never wanted. Stop. My voice was firm but not unkind. We both know that's not true. A long silence followed. Then, barely audible, what happens now? I don't know, I said honestly. That depends on a lot of things. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Marissa at a small restaurant far from our usual haunts. She looked thinner, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. I've been seeing a therapist, she said, not meeting my eyes. She says I have issues with entitlement. I nodded but said nothing. Marcus is cooperating with the FBI, she continued. He claims I knew everything. She finally looked up. I didn't know about the foreign connections, Dad. I swear. But the rest. I can't deny it anymore. Thank you for being honest, finally. She twisted her napkin. The DA offered a deal. Community service, probation, no jail time if I testify against Marcus. I'll support whatever decision you make, I said carefully. After dinner, walking to our cars, she paused. Grandpa's attorney called. He said you're establishing a scholarship fund in Grandpa's name. Yes. For engineering students who can't afford college. Dad would have liked that. She nodded. I'd like to help. Not with money, I know that's not appropriate. But maybe mentoring the students. I studied my daughter's face, the face I'd loved since the moment she was born. Behind the makeup and carefully controlled expression, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability. Authenticity. We'll see, I said. Trust takes time to rebuild. 6 months later, I stood at my father's grave, placing fresh flowers against his headstone. So much had changed. Marissa was working at a small engineering firm, no connection to Caldwell Industries, and attending weekly therapy. Marcus had pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges. The company was thriving under my leadership, though I'd implemented many of Dad's plans for eventual employee ownership. I won the battle, Dad, I whispered to the quiet cemetery. But I'm still fighting for what matters most, our family. As I turned to leave, I saw Marissa waiting respectfully at a distance, holding her own flowers. I nodded, and she approached the grave. Together, in silence, we stood remembering the man whose legacy had nearly torn us apart, but whose wisdom might just help us find our way back to each other. The inheritance wasn't just money after all. It was the chance to discover what truly matters, and what doesn't.